During a power outage, my wife didn't realize I'd come home early. In the darkness, I heard her tell our neighbor I only married him for the inheritance. That night, I canceled her access to everything and rewrote my will. Her reaction the next morning? Screaming, tears, and taunts. Too late. My name is Harris Wren. I'm 42 years old, and for the last 6 years, I've been married to Natalie, a woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. She was everything I thought I wanted. Beautiful, charming, and warm in all the ways that made me believe she was genuine. I met her when I was 36, right after my father passed and left me a sizable inheritance. Not that I needed it, I'd built a good life for myself already. I owned a successful marketing firm in Charleston, South Carolina, had a nice home, and didn't carry the usual baggage that men my age sometimes did. No messy divorces, no kids from previous relationships, no financial struggles. I thought Natalie loved me for who I was. But love doesn't sound like what I heard that night. I was supposed to be out of town. A business trip in Atlanta, 3 days for a client meeting, a few rounds of golf, and a nice dinner or two. I had told Natalie I'd be home on Friday. But Thursday evening, my flight back was canceled due to a storm, and rather than wait around, I rented a car and drove home. I wanted to surprise her. I didn't expect to be the one surprised. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the storm had knocked out power across the neighborhood. The house was dark except for the glow of candles flickering through the front window. It was quiet, almost eerily so, and for a moment, I just sat in my car, listening to the rain patter against the windshield. Then I saw movement inside. I figured Natalie had gone to bed early, maybe curled up with a book in the living room, waiting for the power to return. But as I stepped inside, something made me pause. Laughter. A man's laughter. I set my bags down carefully and moved toward the living room, my footsteps silent against the hardwood floor. The scent of wine filled the air. And then, in the glow of the candles, I saw them. Natalie and our neighbor Devin. Devin lived 2 houses down. A friendly, easygoing guy, at least on the surface. He was in his mid-30s, worked in real estate, and had one of those smiles that women seem to love. I never liked him much, but I had no reason to suspect him of anything. Until that night. Natalie was reclined on the couch, a glass of red wine in hand. Devin was beside her, leaning in just a little too close. But it wasn't their proximity that made my stomach twist. It was the words that left my wife's mouth. I only married him for the inheritance. At first, I thought I had misheard. But then she laughed, swirling her wine in the glass, her voice dripping with amusement. He's so damn gullible, Devin. You think I actually love him? Please. He was just the safest option. Devin chuckled, shaking his head. So when's the old man gonna kick the bucket? You've been waiting long enough. Oh, it's only a matter of time, she purred, taking another sip of wine. Once he's gone, I get everything. And then, I didn't hear the rest. I didn't need to. Something inside me cracked. I felt it, the sharp, burning realization that the woman I had built my life with had been lying to me from the start. For a few seconds, I just stood there in the darkness, my breath slow and measured, my pulse a steady drum in my ears. Then, without thinking, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the dimly lit room like a blade. Natalie gasped, nearly dropping her glass. Devin tensed, his face shifting from smug amusement to barely concealed panic. Harris. Natalie's voice wavered, her expression frozen between shock and dread. Devin swallowed hard, shifting uncomfortably. Hey man, didn't know you were back. I said nothing, just stared at them. Natalie scrambled to her feet, forcing a nervous laugh. You weren't supposed to be home until tomorrow. I finally spoke, my voice calm. Too calm. Yeah. Change of plans. An awful silence stretched between us. Devin shifted again, clearly uncomfortable, before muttering, I should go. Damn right he should. Natalie didn't even look at him as he hurried past me, practically sprinting for the front door. She was too busy staring at me, her mind no doubt racing for an excuse. A lie. Anything to explain away what I had just heard. Harris, she started stepping toward me. Listen, no, I cut in, my voice sharp. You listen. She flinched. I took a slow breath, my hands curling into fists. You were using me. From the start. No. It's not like that, save it. I shook my head. I heard you, Natalie. Every word. She paled, her mouth opening and closing uselessly. I let the silence drag on before stepping around her. Harris, wait, where are you going? I grabbed my bags and turned toward the door. I didn't look back. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in a hotel room, my mind replaying the moment over and over again. My wife. The woman I trusted. The woman I loved. Laughing at me. Mocking me. Treating me like a fool. By the time the sun rose, I had made my decision. At exactly 7 a.m., I called my lawyer. By noon, Natalie's access to my accounts was revoked. Her credit cards? Frozen. The house? No longer hers to stay in. I had bought it before we married, so she had no claim. And the best part? My will? Rewritten. Instead of leaving her everything, I decided to donate the majority of my estate to charity. Natalie would get nothing. The moment she realized, she lost her mind. The screaming started around 10 when she tried to buy something, and her card was declined. By noon, she was calling me nonstop. By 3, she was at my office pounding on the door. Harris, she shrieked, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Open this damn door. I walked out calmly, arms crossed. What's the problem? Her face was red with fury. You froze my accounts. Are you insane? I met her glare with a smirk. Oh, sweetheart. I'm not insane. I leaned in slightly. I just woke up. The look on her face was priceless. Natalie was breathing hard, her face twisted in fury. I could see her mind racing, grasping for control of the situation. She had always been good at manipulating people, twisting words, playing the victim, finding a way to turn things in her favor. But this time, she had nothing. You can't do this to me, she hissed, stepping closer. I'm your wife. I tilted my head, pretending to think. Am I supposed to care about that after what I heard last night? That was nothing, Harris. You misunderstood. Her voice cracked in just the right way, like she was about to cry. I almost left. 6 years of marriage, and I knew exactly how she operated. This wasn't regret. This wasn't pain. It was desperation, the realization that her safety net was gone. I stepped past her, heading for my car, but she grabbed my arm. Hard. Where do you think you're going? She demanded. I turned slowly, looking her dead in the eyes. Anywhere that isn't here. Harris. I yanked my arm free and got into the car. She started banging on the window, her voice rising in pitch. People on the sidewalk were starting to stare. Good. Let them see. You don't get to just walk away from me, she shouted, her hands slamming against the glass. I rolled down the window just enough to speak. Oh, Natalie. You already walked away from me. You just didn't realize I was watching. Then I hit the gas, leaving her standing there in the middle of the parking lot, seething. I spent the next 2 days staying at a hotel while I sorted things out. I met with my lawyer, made sure everything was airtight. Frozen assets, divorce papers being drafted, a restraining order ready to go if necessary. Natalie, meanwhile, was unraveling. The text started first. Natalie, Harris, please just talk to me. I can explain. You're overreacting. It wasn't serious. Do you really want to throw away our marriage over one STPID conversation? Then the voicemails. The first few were the usual, apologies, excuses, fake tears. Then came the rage. You think you can just cut me off like this? I'll take you to court, Harris. I'll get everything in the divorce, just wait. That one made me chuckle. The prenup would eat her alive. Then, at 2 a.m., she left another voicemail. A different one. You think this is over? Her voice was low, dark, almost calculated. You have no idea what I'm capable of. And that was the moment I knew things were about to get even worse. The next morning, I sat in my lawyer's office, sipping burnt coffee from a paper cup while he went over the next steps. Jason Monroe had been my attorney for years, mid-50s, sharp as well, and a guy who'd seen every kind of ugly divorce you could imagine. He looked at me over the rim of his glasses, tapping his pen against my file. She's going to fight this, he said bluntly. I know. You prepared for that? I let out a slow breath. As much as I can be. Jason nodded, flipping through the paperwork. You're lucky you had the prenup. It's airtight. But I'll be honest, Harris, people like Natalie, they don't go down easy. I knew that too. I had spent 6 years watching her navigate life like a seasoned con artist. She could cry on cue, twist a situation until she looked like the victim, and charm her way out of just about anything. But she had never been up against me before. My phone buzzed on the table. Natalie. Again. Jason glanced at it. You want to block her? Not yet. I exhaled. I want to see how far she'll go. Jason sighed, rubbing his temple. You ever think about how you got into this mess in the first place? I chuckled dryly. Every damn second. Because he was right. I should have seen the signs. Natalie had always been calculated. At first, I thought it was ambition. She had grown up without much, working her way through college, always chasing the next opportunity. It was something I admired about her. But looking back, she had never been interested in me. She was interested in what I could give her. The expensive vacations, the house, the lifestyle. She loved all of it. Me? I was just a convenient accessory. And now that I was taking all of it away, She was about to show me exactly who she really was. I didn't have to wait long. By the time I left Jason's office, Natalie had escalated. She wasn't just calling and texting anymore. She was showing up. I got back to my hotel room that afternoon, only to find her sitting outside in her car. When she saw me, she stepped out, her face set in that perfect blend of anger and heartbreak she had perfected over the years. Harris. She crossed her arms. We need to talk. I sighed, unlocking my door. We really don't. She grabbed my arm before I could go inside. You can't just disappear. You won't even listen to me. Listen to what? I snapped, turning to face her. To you explaining why you married me for my money? Why you laughed about it with Devin? Her expression darkened at his name. You don't even understand what that was about. Oh, please enlighten me. She hesitated. Because she had nothing. I shook my head. I'm done, Natalie. I don't owe you a damn thing. Her jaw clenched, and just like that, the mask slipped. You think you can just cut me off? She hissed, stepping closer. After everything I've given up for this marriage? I almost left. She gave up nothing. But before I could respond, she leaned in, lowering her voice. You don't want me as your enemy, Harris. A slow chill crept up my spine. She was staring at me, her blue eyes dark with something unreadable. For the first time, I realized just how far she was willing to go. And that's when I knew this wasn't just going to be a divorce. This was war. Natalie didn't wait long to launch her first ATTCK. By the next morning, my phone was flooded with texts from mutual friends, all variations of, what the HLL is going on between you and Natalie? Dude, she's saying you froze her out of the bank accounts with no warning. I don't know what to believe, man, but she's telling people you're having some kind of midlife crisis. Ah, there it was. She wasn't coming after me in court just yet, she was coming for my reputation. I wasn't surprised. Natalie had always been good at controlling the narrative. She had this way of making herself look like the victim, of twisting the truth just enough so that she always landed on her feet. And now, she was painting me as the cold, cruel husband who had abandoned her out of nowhere. I ignored most of the messages, but when my business partner, Ben, called me, I knew I had to answer. You need to get ahead of this, Harris, he said the second I picked up. She's telling people you locked her out of everything with no explanation. That's because the explanation makes her look like a gold-digging sociopath, I said dryly. Ben sighed. Look, man, I don't know the full story, but you know how people are. The more she talks, the worse you look. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Of course. Natalie wasn't STPID. She knew I wouldn't publicly air our dirty laundry. She was counting on it. I'll handle it, I muttered. Just be careful, Ben warned. Something about the way she's acting. It doesn't feel like she's just after sympathy. I hung up, a bad feeling settling in my gut, because I knew he was right. Natalie didn't just want pity. She wanted leverage. I didn't have to wait long to find out what her next move was. 2 days later, I got a call from Jason. You're not going to like this, he said, his tone grim. Great, I muttered. What now? He sighed. Natalie is claiming you were financially abusive during your marriage. I froze. She what? She's saying you controlled all the money, wouldn't let her have access to anything, and now you've left her completely stranded with nothing. I laughed, actually laughed, because it was so ridiculous. She had access to multiple joint accounts, Jason. I bought her a car. She had credit cards I paid off every month. I know, Jason said. But none of that matters when it's your word against hers. I gritted my teeth. So what now? Do I just sit here and let her spread lies? No, Jason said. We go on offense. That's when I realized Natalie had been expecting me to just take the hits. She thought I'd play the quiet, respectable ex-husband. The guy who just lets the divorce play out, doesn't fight back, doesn't expose her for what she really is. She had underestimated me. The first thing I did was compile every financial record from our marriage. Bank statements, credit card bills, proof of the luxurious lifestyle she had been living at my expense. The second thing I did? I made sure the right people saw it. The same mutual friends she had been crying to? They suddenly had copies of transactions showing her spa days, designer shopping sprees, and $1,000 weekend getaways. I didn't say a word. Just let the evidence speak for itself. And just like that, her entire narrative started to crumble. But Natalie? She wasn't done yet. Because the next move she made was the one that changed everything. Natalie wasn't the kind of person who went down without a fight. After my quiet counter at CK, exposing her extravagant spending and shutting down her claims of financial abyssy, she must have realized she was losing ground. The calls and texts slowed. The mutual friends who had initially sympathized with her suddenly weren't as eager to pick sides. That should have been the end of it. But Natalie wasn't done. A week later, Jason called me again. She just filed a motion, he said, sounding almost amused. I frowned. For what? She's asking for temporary spousal support. I blinked. What? She claims she has no income, no assets, and that you left her destitute. I barked out a laugh. She has a master's degree, Jason. And a job. Jason chuckled. She resigned last week. Quit her job voluntarily so she could argue that she's completely dependent on you. My stomach twisted. That manipulative. Can she actually pull this off? I asked, forcing myself to stay calm. Jason sighed. Not likely. She was only married to you for 6 years, and the prenup is solid. But we'll have to go to court for this one. I exhaled slowly. Fine. If she wanted a courtroom battle, she'd get one. The hearing for temporary support was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Natalie arrived dressed in all black, her makeup subtle, her hair pulled back into a low bun. She looked like a grieving widow rather than a woman divorcing a man she had mocked behind his back. The performance started the second she took the stand. She dabbed at her eyes, voice trembling, as she spoke about how I had controlled every aspect of our finances. She claimed she had been forced to quit her job because the stress of the divorce had left her emotionally shattered. She painted me as a cruel, calculating man who had abandoned his helpless wife. I just sat there calm, hands folded in my lap. Then my lawyer stood up. Mrs. Wren, Jason began smoothly, you claim you had no access to finances during your marriage. Can you explain these transactions? He placed a thick stack of papers on the witness stand. Natalie frowned, flipping through them. Then her face drained of color. Because right there, in black and white, were years' worth of bank statements showing her lavish spending. $4,200 at a designer boutique in New York. $7,800 on a spa retreat in Arizona. $1,500 on a single bottle of wine. Jason let the silence stretch before delivering the final blow. And isn't it true, he continued, that you recently quit your job voluntarily, just days before filing for spousal support? Natalie's mouth opened. Closed. Then she glared at me. For the first time, she knew she had lost. The judge ruled against her. She would get nothing. But I wasn't done. After court, I saw Natalie waiting outside, arms crossed. You think you've won? She spat as I approached. I stopped, tilting my head. Haven't I? She took a step closer, lowering her voice. I'll find another way, Harris. You can't just... I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. A recording started playing. I only married him for the inheritance. Her own voice. Clear as day. She froze. You know, I said, slipping my phone back into my pocket, I was going to let this stay between us. But since you've been so eager to destroy me, I figured. Why not return the favor? Her hands clenched into fists. What did you do? I smiled. Let's just say our mutual friends won't be returning your calls anymore. And Devin. I leaned in slightly. His wife has the recording now too. Her eyes went wide. Devin's wife, Maria, had always been suspicious of him. This was the final straw. Last I heard, she had kicked Devin out of the house and filed for divorce. Natalie? She became social poison. The friends who had rallied behind her dropped her the moment they realized she had lied. The people she had been trying to manipulate suddenly wanted nothing to do with her. And the best part? She had no access to my money, no house, and thanks to quitting her job, no income. For years, she had treated me like an ATM. Now she had to fend for herself. A few months later, I was sitting at a cafe in Charleston, sipping coffee, when Jason sent me a final update. Natalie had moved out of state. She had tried to get a job in real estate, but it turned out burning bridges comes with consequences. Her credit was in shambles from unpaid bills. The friends she once relied on wouldn't take her calls. And Devin? After his divorce, he had tried to reach out to her. She didn't answer. No honor among thieves, I guess. I set my phone down, staring out at the ocean. I had spent 6 years building a life with a woman who never loved me. A woman who had seen me as nothing more than a stepping stone. But I wasn't bitter. Because she had lost everything. And I had lost nothing. I paid the bill, stood up, and walked away. For the first time in a long time, I felt free.